Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
We've got a case here where both sides claim that the other side is attempting something that's just so audacious it's crazy. And they can't both be right. So a lot of people sent me the story because it was a high-profile story, and it still is unfolding. In fact, later today, there will be a hearing in court. But I want to cover this now. Elvis Presley's granddaughter fights the foreclosure sale on Graceland and alleges that the people trying to foreclose are scammers. So Kelly Hayes wrote this. Fox 32 Chicago ran it, but it's all over the place in the news. Elvis Presley's granddaughter, Riley, is reportedly suing to stop the foreclosure auction of the Graceland estate, where, of course, Elvis spent many of his years. She is alleging fraud and claiming that the company behind the sale isn't even real. So the allegations, like I said, on both sides are quite extreme. Riley is 34 years old. She's the daughter of the late Lisa Marie Presley, and she's the current owner of Graceland. She filed a lawsuit to stop the sale, according to Fox 13 in Memphis, citing court documents. Now, Elvis bought Graceland, which is in Memphis, back in 1957, and it remained his home base throughout the height of his success and ultimately became his final resting place. The estate has since welcomed millions of paid visitors over the past 4 decades. I've been there. I've toured Graceland. I've seen Elvis's grave, and it's one of those things. It's just you got to see it if you're in the area. You just have to see it. So here's what you need to know. Lisa Marie was Elvis's only daughter, and she became the sole heir of the Elvis Presley Trust when he died back in 1977. Along with Elvis Presley Enterprises, the trust manages Graceland and other assets until she sold her majority interest in 2005. But she retained ownership of the mansion. She kept Graceland. It's got 13 acres around it, and she also kept everything inside the home. Her son is buried there, along with her father and other members of the Presley family. So she recently starred in Daisy Jones and the Six. She inherited Graceland when her mother died in 2023. And of course, her mother is now also buried at the famed Memphis landmark. And so keep in mind that it's not just another piece of real estate. This is one of the most famous pieces of real estate in America in terms of like a home that somebody lived in. This week it was reported that a non-judicial sale of the property had been scheduled for May 23rd by a company claiming that they lent money against the property. Now, the company is an LLC. They presented court documents claiming that Lisa Marie borrowed $3.8 million and gave a deed of trust encumbering Graceland as collateral against the loan. And that concept is not that hard to understand. If you own a piece of property outright, you can go to a bank and say, lend me money against my property. It happens all the time. The question is, did it happen here? The company claimed that the debt was never repaid, so therefore they have the right to take possession and ownership of Graceland. Now, in response, Riley claimed that the documents from the investment company are false. She also claimed in the lawsuit that her mother never borrowed money from the company and never gave them the deed of trust to Graceland. So now some people might say, but Steve, isn't it possible that your mother could do this and you wouldn't know about it? Maybe she wasn't proud of doing it. Well, it's not just my mom wouldn't do such a thing. There's some other factual allegations being made here. She alleges that the company isn't even a real company. On information and belief, the LLC is not a real entity. It appears to be a false entity created for the purpose of defrauding the trust, which is the trust here, the heirs of Lisa Marie Presley, or any purchaser of Graceland in a non-judicial sale. That's what the suit says. Attached to the lawsuit filed on behalf of the granddaughter are the alleged loan documents to Lisa Marie and the deed of trust, according to the local news station. Attorneys for the granddaughter claim that Lisa Marie's signature has been falsified on those documents. Well, you say, how would you know that? Well, documents like that are often notarized. And it turns out that the court records also claim that the notary who supposedly notarized these documents confirmed that she did not and that she never met Lisa Marie. So on Monday, the legal team secured a temporary restraining order to stop the sale, and an injunction hearing was set for Wednesday, which, as I sit here and talk to you, it is today. It'll be later today. So I'll do an update on this. This right here is enough for us to talk about for quite some time. The most interesting thing is, I talked before, when you get a signature notarized, all the notary is doing is confirming that the signature is authentic. And I've signed so many documents that have been notarized, and I've also had documents notarized on behalf of my clients where my client comes into the office and a notary comes over and goes through this whole rigmarole and has my client sign and gets some identification and records it and blah, 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 blah. And if you don't know, when a notary notarizes something, they stamp it. And they stamp it with a block of text that says, I am a notary in the county of such and such, acting in the county of such and such in the state of Michigan. And then they sign it, they date it. And once they do that, that means that obviously if you have a swearing contest, that is, somebody walks into court with a piece of paper and goes, they signed this. And the other side goes, I did not sign that. Well, gee, it's one person's word against another person's word. Oh, wait, it's notarized. We can bring in the notary. And the notary will come in, and just so you know, notaries don't just stamp something because somebody says they are who they claim to be. They'll ask for identification. They'll make a note of when they did this. And notaries often have little ledgers or logbooks that they keep that'll say, on such and such a date, somebody brought a document, and the document appeared to be, and they say what the document is, if it's title or something, affidavit of witness. And then they'll say, the time and date that they had something signed, and they'll also indicate what they asked for with respect to identification. Because a notary walks into a room, and there's 6 attorneys standing there. One of the attorneys goes, this is my client, Bob Smith. Forgive me, but I know a guy named Bob Smith, so I can do that. And he's going to sign this. Can you notarize it? She's going to say, or he's going to say, give some identification. Show me. I want to know that you are who you claim to be. And what's funny is, I've gone into a bank before to get something notarized because I was in a situation where that made the most sense. And I had something notarized, and a bank person I've dealt with for years says, I need some identification. Now, you might go, but why would they ask for identification if they know you? Well, because they wanted to write in their little booklet what form of identification I showed them, so they get asked, how do you know that was Steve Lehto? If they didn't make a note of something, it would be a swearing contest between the notary and somebody else. I recognized him. Okay. Well, he handed me his driver's license. And his driver's license was from this state. It had an address on it, was this, and here's the driver's license number. Oh, and then they can ask me, let's see your driver's license. Turns out it matches. I'd have a hard time getting out of that and saying I didn't sign it. So somebody like Lisa Marie Presley, she's very, very famous. But a notary would be very, very hard-pressed to say, well, I've seen her in the news, in People magazine, I'm not going to ask for ID. A notary's going to say, yeah, I need to see ID. You got ID, don't you? Of course you do. So the notary will have the logbook, and the interesting thing is, here the notary's going, I didn't notarize that. So you have to assume that's true. If that's true, you've got a very serious problem. Now, you might say, but Steve, what if the notary now is wrong? What if that really was Lisa Marie Presley? Well, let's go to the logbook and see all the things that she notarized around that time. Is there an entry for Graceland? Oh, there's not. What are the odds that she did such an important thing and left it out? And so that's one of the biggest things here that I think will be relatively easy to prove, is whether or not Lisa Marie Presley ever sat down and signed these loan documents, because the notary is saying, it wasn't me. And here's the thing, that's not a mistake that would be easily made, in the sense that what if somebody else notarized it? No. Every notary I've known has had their own little stamp or their own little crimper or whatever they use. And they walk in with this little pile of stuff and they put it down on the table. They say, let me driver's license, let me see some ID. Okay, looks like you. Okay, cool. They start making some notes over here. Okay. Sign it. They watch it being signed and they go, okay. Fill some more information out. And they go. So it wouldn't have been the situation like, oh, somebody else had it notarized or witnessed it as a notary. But no, that doesn't make any sense either. So that's problem number one. Problem number two is also fairly easy to check into, is if you lent somebody, was it $3.8 million? Yeah, $3.8 million. I presume you did that by providing them some kind of traceable funds. I doubt that you brought in duffel bags filled with hundreds and said, yeah, you can weigh it. It's $3.8 million. No. So the question then is, do you have a check, certified or some sort of instrument, or was it wire transferred, I guess? But keep in mind that there's transaction records at both ends of such a transfer. So somebody needs to be able to produce evidence of that payment at one end being made and at the other end being received, okay? So I know people are going to be screaming, yelling about, whether or not they actually use checks. They might. I've seen some rather large checks in my life, and something like this could be handled by a check. But the point is that somewhere along the line, she would have gotten $3.8 million. That's the kind of money that doesn't just slide off the radar. There'd be some documentation for that. So right now, I'm going to tell you, there's a judge who's going to have two groups of people in front of him today who's going to be looking at both parties, thinking to himself whether or not he says it out loud or she. One side here is completely wrong. And that's very frustrating because you have situations in court where both sides think they're right. But here, it's possible that one side is completely wrong and they know it. So we'll see what happens. And finally, I have to point out that I've mentioned before equitable relief. When you go to court and ask for money damages, this person breached a contract, they owe me $1 million. Or I was involved in a car accident, this drunk driver ran a red light, totaled my car, it put me in the hospital. I'm seeking compensatory damages for my car and for my physical injuries. That's where the court just, in essence, says you write them a check. But money damages don't solve all problems. So let's assume as a hypothetical that Graceland was never mortgaged this way. And if the foreclosure went through, Graceland got sold, and then it turns out that Riley is right 100%, what do you do then? Unwind the sale and give her the house back, the property? That wouldn't be that easy to do necessarily. It makes more sense to hold off on the sale until you know what's happening. So going to court and asking to put that sale off is asking for injunctive relief. Injunctive relief is where you're asking the court to order someone to do something or to not do something, generally speaking. And here they're asking for that sale to be put on hold, for the court to sort this out. And boy, this would be a fun one to be a judge on, because you'd be looking at it going, okay, it's possible that the granddaughter's confused or doesn't know. But if this really is a company that is kind of iffy, and the notary says, I didn't sign that document, ooh, this one could get fun. So that's the story right now. Elvis Presley's granddaughter is fighting Graceland foreclosure sale and is alleging that the other side's committed some very serious fraud. Kelly Hayes wrote that. A lot of people sent it to me. Thanks a lot. Fox 32 Chicago ran it, as did many others. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. We should be choosing what we want to keep, not what we want to get rid of.